Hello everyone and welcome to Uplifters Webinar Wednesdays. Thank you very much for joining us. This is a re-recording of today's session as we were experiencing some heavy audio issues in our previous recording. Thank you to everyone for your patience in the previous instance, and thank you for joining us for this particular instance. Today we are taking a deep dive into member and participant management and maintenance. We're going to be taking a look at some of the tools that you have available to you in order to obviously refine your site as well as refine the listings of your members and participants and make sure that they are working with just a singular account, right? It's always nice for them to have just one account. So in today's call, we are going to be going through what a member and a participant is. We're going to talk about creating, editing, and deleting both members and participants. We'll look at some basic account maintenance as well as some slightly more advanced features. And then finally, last but not least, we're going to use all the tools that we learned about to work on a very convoluted and mixed up scenario. So that is some good stuff to look forward to. To kick things off, why don't we begin with a quick definition of members versus participants. So within the Uplifter system, you will have two distinct splits between the users that are interacting with this site. The first thing is going to be a member account. This is under People and Accounts, Member Accounts. From the administrative side, this lands you on the Member Manager page, which we'll take a look at in just a moment. This page will list all of the people who have created a member account within your system. Member accounts essentially are synonymous with moms and dads, parents and guardians, but they'll also be your coaches and instructors, your administrators, your board members, etc. Pretty much anyone who wants to interact with the site in any meaningful way needs to create a member account. The other element to the site is participants. On the administrative system, it's People and Accounts Participants. This is a list of all of your athletes. So these are the users who are actually going to be enrolled in classes, be evaluated, take attendance on, etc. So these are the athletes themselves. Now, there are certain circumstances where a member and an athlete are one and the same. So an athlete is taking charge of their own account. That's totally fine. But in most circumstances, you would have a member account, mom and dad, parent, guardian, etc., and a participant profile, which is the actual athlete themselves who's going to be registering. So now that we understand a little bit more about the difference between members and participants, we can take a look at how these are generated within your system. First and foremost, let's take a look at the members. Members can be created in one of two main ways. The most common way is just through your website. When someone logs or navigates to your site, they can select the login option, or they can go to your registration page and they can select one of these options to register, and if they're not logged in, it'll prompt them to do so. If they've never generated an account before, they can use the first time registering form to fill in the information and create a member account. Likewise, as you may have seen, you can also select the Have an Account option to just log in with an account if you already have one. When they fill in this form, they'll have created a member account. Now that is from the member side, but you can also create a member account through your administrative side as well. So under People and Accounts, Member Accounts, you can select the Add Member option from the toolbar here and begin to fill in a form that's very similar to the one that was previously experienced. Now you may notice a slight difference in here, and that's because you can really customize the way that your members experience this creation process and this interaction process. This is done for your members in a couple of different spots. The first is going to be under your Look and Feel section here. And my apologies, under your Notification section here. So under Settings, Global Settings, Notifications and Messages, you'll be able to customize the feeling, the overall feeling that users get during the account creation experience by customizing the elements under the account creation settings. So you can sort of muck about with these and make them really feel exactly how your club wants them to feel. Additionally, you can also toggle whether or not members need to enter their birth date in. For older clubs, you'll also see an additional option just below this that allows you to disable the requirements for having to enter an address during registration, during account creation. The reason for this feature being there, and the reason why newer clubs don't even have this have the ability to toggle it on or off, it's just always going to be there, is because this is more akin to a natural online experience for those shopping online, for those registering online with other systems, etc. This is very akin to that overall experience. Users aren't used to entering in all of this information right out of the gate. If you shop with Amazon, for instance, you're going to add something to your cart and etc., and then only during the time of checkout do you actually enter in your address information. So this is essentially approximating that and assimilating to that to give the users a more common, consistent feel online. So beyond this, you can also create and edit and customize custom fields which allow you to ask for information that Uplifter might not do otherwise or intrinsically. So you might want to ask your members for more information about emergency contact info, about who's okay to pick up your kids in an emergency, stuff like that. So you can create and customize the form to any degree that you'd like. You can also ensure that this information is represented on your reports and things like that. So that's a really, really powerful tool. Last but not least, you can also customize the nomenclature that your site and system uses. So for instance, and this, my apologies, this is done under Settings, Global Settings, Look and Feel. And as we scroll down here, we can see a terminology section. So maybe you don't call them members, maybe you're really going to call them parent and guardian. And similarly, maybe you don't call them participants, maybe you call them athlete. And of course, there's the plural option to the side there, and you can really make this system speak how your club and how your members are used to speaking. So coaches, classes, etc. Of course, with any systems pages, please don't forget to select Save All. Now that is creating members. Let's talk a little bit about editing these members once they're created. From the administrative side, you'll want to navigate back to People and Accounts, Member Accounts. And that warning there was because I didn't save. People and Accounts, Member Accounts, and here we see a list of all of the member accounts that have been created on the system. As noted at the start of the call, we're going to double back on this, and right now, in fact, this member account page, this member manager page, allows you to view all of the members who have ever created an account on your site. You can scroll through here, you can see some basic information, name, some contact info, their participants, their status, which we'll talk about in just a second. But you can also see some information regarding their costs. So you can see that Gabrielle here is in fact in arrears. So there are some quick glance information about their statuses and really who owes you some money. Additionally, on this manager page, along with really any other manager page in the system, you can filter on the left-hand side here. And once you've filtered, you can select this Create Mail icon in the top right-hand corner. This allows you to very quickly and precisely create a recipient list for your outbound emails. So it's very often the case, well, not very often the case, but sometimes the case, that you're using the communication emails tool and you're creating a recipient list, and maybe you just can't quite get the list of users that you want. In that case, definitely check out the other manager pages, because you can filter in many different ways on those pages, and then you can create this new email that will generate a recipient list based on the filters you've applied to that specific page. So there's a ton of ways to make sure that you're getting the right recipient list and you're sending it off to the people who need that information. Excellent. So once you are on this page, you'll be able to review any admin that you have within your system. As we scroll down here, maybe we want to take a look at Lori Fung. To enter Lori's account, you simply click on that. I actually middle clicked, which is just clicking down the scroll wheel. That opens it up in a new tab here. And here we see Lori Fung's account. We have a lot of information at the top here. We also have the account menu here, so we can see their overall account, their participant calendar, participants, invoices, and their volunteering schedule. On this page, we also have some sub-tabs based on the menu that we've selected. So under account, for instance, we have account status, family, details, and notes. Now, if we want to make some edits to Lori Fung's account, we can absolutely do so by selecting this edit icon here. And this will bring up the form just as we saw it, with a few little tweaks. We don't have to do anything about the physical address, like the building, the mailing address, and stuff like that. We also see some communication preferences down at the bottom. Now, it's important to note as administrators that you cannot opt a user into mailing lists. You can only opt them out of mailing lists. This is in concert with the Canadian anti-spam laws, and it means that if someone opts out of one of your mailing lists, that is 100% their call and their right to do so. But of course, you can make edits to this information as you like. One thing of note before you hit save, please be sure to review the information that is present here. While we have done our best to restrict systems from doing so, there are certain circumstances, certain browser extensions and stuff like that like to fill in these forms to sort of speed things up. Now, under normal circumstances, they're very handy, but when you're editing someone else's information, it can sometimes populate these fields with your own information. So definitely keep an eye out for that and make sure that it actually says their correct information before you hit save. Similarly, Lori, of course, can log into her own account, and she can access this information and update this information on her own accord as well. This does include her passwords, which is important. We'll just talk about that in just a second. Last but not least, on this account, what you may have noticed is there wasn't the addresses here. If you do want to edit those, you'll want to go to the account menu here, which is the default landing page, and select the tab Account Details. At the bottom of this account details page, you will see their addresses, and of course you can edit this. If they have more than one address, you can add a new one, you can make certain ones their primary, etc. So with that said, we are going to double back to the password conundrum. Now, it is very often the case that users will contact administrators saying, I'm having a lot of trouble logging in, I don't know what's going on. Some people are more tech savvy than others. That's okay. We have two main options for users when they have issues logging in. First and foremost is going to be our main recommendation, which is to use the forgot password option. If we were to look at the login options here, and we were trying to log in, and we forgot, and we're just like, I don't know what my password is, right below this option, we have click here to reset your password, and this is going to send them an email which they can follow through with and update their email on their account and then log in successfully. Now, worst case scenario, you get a user who just simply doesn't get it, simply isn't capable of doing things, or maybe they unwittingly blacklisted your club and now they don't receive emails, or something's happening. In that case, not to worry, it's not the end of the world. You can always navigate back to the members account through people in account, members accounts, and select to edit their account, and here you can update their password with a new and confirmed password. Now, if you are going about it this way, once again, be mindful of the information that your systems might be automatically loading in for you. But additionally, you'll want to be sure that they update their password after this to a new password, just to increase the security. If you email them with saying, hey, you can now log in with password, new password, well, there's sort of a lack of security with that. So you do want to let them know and encourage them to, once they've logged in successfully, update their password once more, just to make it something of their own and something more secure. Excellent. So that is editing your members. Now, it may be true to say that there are certain circumstances where you just want to get rid of someone. In that case, you will want to pop back to People and Accounts, Member Accounts. And on this page, you can find, again, all of your members. So you'll want to scroll through and find the person that you no longer want. In this particular case, we are going to select Alfred. Alfred here has not used his account at all. And in fact, based on his email here, I don't think he's ever going to use his account. He's just testing out the system, he's poking things and seeing what's what. So I'm going to actually remove Alfred from the system. In order to do this, the main and most direct method is going to be this delete icon. This delete icon is actually only ever present when you are able to use it successfully. And what that means is if Alfred was using his account, if he did have invoices, if he did have participants, or he had some volunteer positions he was filling in, you wouldn't see this option. So simply by the fact that we do see this icon here, we know it's safe to delete and remove Alfred from this system. If you don't see this icon, you'll need to review the participants, invoices, and volunteering to see where those ties are and what's keeping Alfred within the system. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. So in this particular instance, we're going to delete Alfred, and that clears him from the system. He is no longer a part of our member roster. Excellent. So now that we have the basics of members, creating, editing, deleting, we're going to talk a little bit about some basic member maintenance. First and foremost, there's the member status. Now, every member within your system has a member status, and you can see this as we scroll through, that everyone presented presently is active. actives the default status when the account is created, and this means they're using their account, they're doing things, etc. They can log in successfully, that's no problem. But let's say for sake of argument, Sean Johnson needs to be updated in terms of his status. Something going on with his account, we need to make sure this changes, he's no longer active. There are in fact two other statuses that you can apply to a member account. The first is going to be inactive. An inactive member is no longer listed on your member accounts listings here. They're also not going to be offered in your member suggestions here. So I haven't actually reset this page, so that's why we still see him. But they won't be offered in those listings anymore. Additionally, they won't be in a lot of the various pages and stuff like that. So they tuck away very nicely. So this is the perfect status for someone who you're not 100% sure on. Maybe they're going to use the system, maybe they're not. If you just want to sort of get them out of the way and get them off all the pages, you can inactivate them. Now, a member can also log into their system and inactivate themselves. That's a status they can apply to their own accounts if they want to. And essentially, this is just saying, if the member does it on their own behalf, this is just saying, forget about me, I'm no longer going to use this system, I'm inactivating my account. Now, if the user wants to come back and logs in using their username and password, even using the forgot password if they don't recall, it's been a little while, if their status is inactive, that automatically puts them back to active status. They're now back and they're using their account. So anytime you are set to inactive, if they log in again, they'll automatically be set to active. The final status, however, suspended, doesn't allow that. So if you want to get rid of Sean here and completely get rid of him, then you can say, you know what, you are now suspended and this email will no longer be usable in terms of logging in. They definitely can't create accounts because you can't create another account based off of this email being used already. So they are completely suspended from the system. Now, just as an FYI, it is a very common question for administrators to ask, how do I stop people from doing this in the first place? How do I stop them from making these duplicates? Well, the internet is a bit like the Wild West. There are some considerations and there are some freedoms that are implicit within the system of the internet, of the World Wide Web, that allows users to sort of do what they like. And it's very, very difficult to restrict a user from creating another account if they truly wanted to. Like, you could suspend Sean here, for instance, and he can go and make another email Sean 2. And so there's not really a good way to stop the system or have the system stop them from accounting for that. One thing we would recommend, however, is that the more you engage your member base, the less likely they are to erroneously or even intentionally generate another member account. For instance, if you're using the evaluations tool, if you're doing attendance, if you're using goals and track sheets and stuff like that, if you're using the features of the system for athlete tracking, it's very hard for a member to say, you know what, I'm going to give all of that information up to make just a new account for no reason. They're going to be more adamant about logging into their existing account. So that's definitely something you want to look into and take advantage of in order to reduce the number of duplicate accounts. So with that said, the very last element of our basic account maintenance is we are going to be looking at inviting members. So inviting members happens through the Family tab here. Oh, actually, my apologies. We're going to double back on one element here. What happens when there's an inactive or suspended member? How do you access them? Because if I reload this page and I look for Sean, he doesn't exist anymore. What happened? So if you are looking for someone who has been suspended or even just inactivated, what you'll want to do is navigate to the members page here, and you'll want to filter by also show inactive suspended members and filter there, and now we will have Sean listed among them. Very easy to find, highlighted in red. So definitely keep that in mind. Okay, so on to inviting members. Now, when it comes to members who are looking to sort of intertwine their accounts, there are a couple of different ways to manage this. First and foremost, you can use the invite tool. So inviting, let's just pop into any one of these accounts here. Inviting is done through the members account, under the account menu option, under the Family tab. On this tab, they can use these tools that are available to them. They can do this through their own member account, through their regular logins, so you don't need to do this for them. But they can invite other members to their account. So let's say, for sake of argument, you've got mom and dad. Mom makes an account and adds a participant, but now dad wants to log in and see all the information and how their participant's doing. In that case, mom can come to the family tab and send an invitation to dad. dad@email.com. Nice and original. So she can send an email to dad, and what this is going to do is invite the user to join their account. A joint account shares participants and shares shares address information, but does not share anything else. If Brent here was mom and we invited dad, dad would be able to see any participants of Brent's. Likewise, Brent would be able to see any participants of dad. However, they wouldn't be able to see each other's information in regards to active or past invoices, volunteering, anything of that nature. So while the term merge is being used, it's really more a combination or a sharing of participants in this instance. So this invitation option here should be used for people who are amicable with one another and are okay with sharing each other's participants. There are also alternatives for sharing individual participants, which we'll look at in just a moment, but that is the first key factor. Now, for yourselves as administrators as well, you can perform this invitation on behalf of the member if you want to. You can also navigate to the family tab and use this merge option here. This is synonymous with this invitation option when it specifies that it's to join your account. There is another option we'll be seeing in just a second here, but by selecting this merge another account option, we get to see a nice long list of all our members. We can actually merge another member into this, and again, it's a bit of a misnomer. It's actually sharing your participants and sharing your addresses. And that's really about it. They can't see each other's invoices and anything like that. So I can come here and I can add another member to share with, and it's going to let me know that this is indeed an irreversible action. So be very aware of who you're connecting with whom. Apparently I've connected it with himself. So I'm not going to hit yes to that. I'm going to click cancel there. So that is one way of connecting your admins. Your members, sorry. We are going to be looking at another method to do that as well in regards to participants. But before we can do that, we've got to talk a little bit about some basics about participants. So let's take a look at basic participant elements. Now, participants can be created in your system in one of two ways, very similar to members. Participants can be created by the member themselves. They can log into the system. They can navigate to their account. Do that on mine here, navigate to their account, and they can select the Participants tab and begin generating participants. Here I have Alira, sorry. Similarly, you as an administrator, just like members, you can generate participants on behalf of users as well. This can be done through people and accounts, member accounts, where you can select the Participants option here, and then work with the Add New option here. Now, the information that's presented here may differ from your current clubs, and that's because we've also customized this experience specific to our personal club. Now, you can do this in a couple of ways, just like the admin options, where we talked a little bit about customizing the interactions and the notifications. You can do the same thing for participants. Now, there's actually, again, two distinct places where you can do this. The first option is going to be under the Custom Fields tab, so Settings, Global Settings, Custom Fields. Here I've created participant fields which directly attach to a participant's profile, and this allows me to ask for information that Uplifter doesn't otherwise ask for intrinsically, like bodysuit size, allergies and medications, individual role, instructor approval, all sorts of different things. And of course, very similar to the member field, I can also make these specific to certain circumstances, so they're only visible on participant creation. Maybe they're only for member edit and view, but you can also have them on your class lists, your reports. Make sure your coaches and your instructors are aware of important information, especially regarding allergies and medical and emergency contact info. So you can have that on your reports. So that's definitely an important element. The other factor is under the other settings page, Settings, Uplifter Settings, and under the Site Options tab here, as we scroll down ever so slightly, we will see the age and gender settings. Here you can specify and customize the gender options that you offer. You can also enable or disable enable or disable, whether or not your members will be able to update their participant's gender and their participant's birth date. Now, this is a really powerful one because there are quite a few clubs out there that have members who love just to game the system, and so they will add a participant, find out that their kid's not old enough for something, and then they'll edit their participant's age. Believe it or not, that happens. So you can actually restrict that from happening by checking this box off. And last but not least, you also have the max age for your tax receipts for those sections and areas who are lucky enough to still have them. Unfortunately, Ontario doesn't, but you can set that for the max age. And of course, be sure to click Save All so you don't lose all of your changes. Excellent. Okay, so now that you have participants within your system, just like your administrators, you can edit them anytime that you'd like. So let's take a look at that. You can do this in a couple of different ways. The most common way, if you're just dealing with the participant profile directly, is through People and Accounts Participants. And from here you can scroll through, find the participant you want to edit, and select to enter their participant profile. Before you do that, however, you may have also noted that this is another manager page. This is an overview page. This is People and Accounts Participants, and just like the Member Accounts page, you can filter this page on the left-hand side, and you can then click Create Mail to generate a recipient list that's specific to the associated members to the way that you filtered your participants. So definitely keep that in mind. You can also see a lot of information at a glance here regarding some of the custom fields you may have introduced, some contact and member information, etc. When you enter into one of these participant profiles, just like the member accounts, participant profiles will have their own submenu to access things like their message board, their personal calendars, their achievements, their development goals. There's tons of stuff to look at here, and we won't have enough time to dive into all of this stuff, but definitely poke around. There's so many cool tools, especially for like snapshot view and evaluations, tons of stuff out there to make this system work in amazing different ways. So as we scroll down here, we also have some participant profile information where we can fill in all of those fields that we saw during the account creation process. Now we actually have a couple of additional fields here that we didn't see during the account creation process, and that was based off of the way that we set up our custom fields. So sometimes they show during account creation, sometimes they show only editing when you're editing the account. It's really up to you how you want to set those up. Now, as we scroll through here, we can of course also scroll all the way down and see how many registered classes they have, which you can filter based off of season, and then you can also quick access this information. You can either see the class, you can see the attendance that they've had for that class. This person's terrible at attending things. You have the invoice where you can go directly to the invoice where they made this purchase, but you can also go to what's known as a rolled up invoice as well through the edit icon here, which rolls everything up under sort of quick little headers, but only shows you this specific purchase, this specific registration. So that's pretty handy for invoices that are very, very large. Most clubs probably won't really even need it. You can just scroll through even if there's a couple dozen, that's no problem. So when you're happy with any edits or changes that you've made here, of course you're going to click Update, and that updates this particular profile. Now if you are speaking to the member account, they can of course do all of this themselves as well. They can self-serve any of these elements. They would log into their account and navigate to the participant's profile page and just select the profile they want to work with, and they can update that information as well. What you'll see here, however, is that a lot of these pieces of information are restricted or not even visible, and that's because the way we've set certain fields and the way that we've set those gender and birth date rules and stuff like that. So be mindful of what you want your users to be able to do, both on their member accounts and their participant profiles, and make sure that it's working how you want it to work. And of course, as administrators, you can either create test accounts or you can log into your own accounts and see exactly what users are saying. You can go to your own personal account on the public side and see what users are experiencing. So don't be afraid to poke around and see what happens. Okay, so that is participants creating and editing. Let's talk a little bit about how to get rid of those ones you don't want anymore. So we are going to navigate back to People and Accounts Participants, and let's say for sake of argument there's a participant here that we just don't want anymore. How can we get rid of them? Now, one thing that we noted when we were talking about our member accounts is when we went into these accounts here, Let's go into Phyllis. We had an icon that showed up here that notified us that this was safe to delete. We can see that Phyllis isn't. She's not safe to delete. But if we go into one of these participant profiles, we actually won't ever see that icon. You won't ever be able to delete a participant from their participant profile. So instead, what you need to do is you actually want to navigate to the member's account, people and accounts, member accounts. You select the appropriate member. Here we have Phyllis, and we're going to go to Phyllis's participant menu. This lists all of her current participants, and as we can see, among them is test name, test last name. That was clearly not something she ever meant to keep, so we can remove this from the system by selecting this delete icon. What you'll note as well with these other listings is they don't have a delete icon. That is the exact same reason as why Phyllis doesn't. They are tied to something. There's an invoice with their name on it. They're on a wait list for something. Something's happening where it's no longer safe to remove them from the system. So they don't show this delete icon. But test name does, and since this is just a basic example, we're going to delete test name and get out of here. So there we are. Test name is now removed from this system, and they can obviously create another profile if they wanted to, but that was just a silly example, so we got rid of it. Alrighty, so that is deleting. That's the basics of deleting a participant. However, there are certain circumstances which we can actually see right here, where participants need to be removed, where there's duplicates, things like that, where you just need to sort of clean things up. So let's take a look at another example here. We are going to look at Bill email. Good old Bill email. When we go to Bill's participants options here, we see he has 3 participants, and I doubt that he has 3 kids named Bill Jr. So we need to make some changes to this and clean this up. As we can see right out of the gate, Bill Jr., this listing is not tied to anything, so we can actually remove Bill Jr. email right away. Let's do that. So now we're only working with 2 profiles. At this point in time, you need to sort of take a moment and figure out which one of these profiles is correct. Now, the thinking behind this is also the same if you happen to have duplicate member accounts as well, where you're like, oh, well, you know, there's 2 of these people, what should I even do here? So with this, then, what you want to do is take a look at the pieces of information that are available to you. Who has registrations? Who has more registrations? Who has the correct information like birth dates and gender and stuff like that? Maybe there's some information like this one here. We have 2008-0202, 2008-0110. So that lets us know there was some issues here. Maybe they didn't add the right birth date at one point. So we can actually remove the one that's incorrect. In some circumstances, you may actually need to reach out to Bill directly and say, hey, which one's which? Which one should we keep? Though under most circumstances, as a site administrator, you're probably pretty aware of who's real and who's not. So let's say, for sake of argument, that this second option here is the incorrect option. The birth date was wrong, so they generated this one. So in the circumstances then, we can go into the erroneous participant profile, and we can make some changes. What we want to do is provide an indicator for us as administrators to know which one is the wrong one right away, no questions asked. So what I like to do is go into the first name and last name and just add dot void apparently, dot void, dash dot void. And by doing this, there we go. And by doing this with the dash void here, we now can return back to Bill's account, and it's very, very obvious which one is the wrong one. Now that's an important step, because the last step in order to remove this profile entirely is to navigate to Bill's invoices and remove all instances of that void account. Now Bill only has 1 invoice here. It's a nice and clean, simple instance. So we can select to edit, and we can go through this invoice and find any instances where that void email shows up. To correct this, it's very, very easy. All you do is select to edit this, and you're going to use the participant dropdown to select the correct instance. Now there may be circumstances where you find that Bill or whatever participant you're working with has been registered for the same program twice. In that instance, a refund is required. If you're unsure of how to do that as of recording this, our next week's Wednesday webinar will actually be about invoices and performing those actions, so definitely join us for that. And of course, you can always watch a recording thereof afterwards as well. So with this particular instance, however, they wanted to be part of both of these programs, so I simply switched the participant that was listed, and now I can scroll down here and I can hit post. However, there is this as well. So we want to remove this, and very much like the example I just spoke to, this gymnastics membership is a duplicate. We don't need to apply it twice to the same person, so we are going to select to delete this in this particular instance. Again, join us on our invoices webinar to talk a little bit more about best practices and things like that. But in this, for ease of use here, we're just going to delete this, and then of course we can perform a refund for the amount that we want to refund, and we're going to post. Now, by completing all of these steps, when we return back to Bill's participant listings, oh, I forgot to accept errors. There we go. Post. There we go. When we return back to Bill's participant listings, we now see that void because they're no longer attached to invoices or anything of that nature. They now have a delete icon, and we can select that to remove them. So that is some basics about participants. We are going to pop back to one last thing about merging accounts before we talk about our final convoluted scenario where we're trying to figure some stuff out and we're have to use all these tools to our advantage here. So we are going to talk a little bit about Kyle and Joy here. So under people and accounts, member accounts, we have two members. One is Kyle Chambers and one is Joy Chambers. When we go into their particular member accounts and to their participants, we can see that they both have quite a few participants. Now, we actually have a couple of ways of sharing these participants. We looked originally at the Family tab option, where we go to Accounts and we go to Family and we send an invitation to the member. And by doing so, we can combine Joy and Kyle. But there might be circumstances where that's not appropriate. Maybe they don't want to share their participants, all their participants. Maybe they only want to share one or two. Think of divorced parents with other families now. So in this particular instance, we can, instead of inviting a member, we can send an invitation for a particular participant. So let's say, for sake of argument, Kyle has Amber and they share custody of Adam. So we can select Adam and we can choose this envelope option here and we can send an invitation. Now, when we first talked about this, we were sending an invitation to a member, so we only saw one option. That was to join my account. And this was essentially synonymous with this merge tool option here, where they then shared all of their participants and they shared all of their addresses. In this instance, however, we're going to select invite to create a separate account. And this will allow them to create an account that's separate from Joy while also sharing this participant. So I can either send this to the participant themselves and let Adam create his own member account and handle his own member information, etc. Or I can enter in the email for Dad here, Kyle Chambers, and send this off to Kyle. And when I select to send this invitation, Kyle will receive that in his email. He'll be able to accept that email, and once he does, he can specify that he already has an account. So he'll be able to log in with that account, and once he finishes that process, he'll find that Adam Chambers is now listed under his participant listings. So what this means is Joy, which she can also self-serve all of these options through her account as well, Joy has sent an invitation to Adam, but instead of sending it to Adam to make his own account, she chose to send it to Kyle, in which case that shared Adam's participant profile with Kyle. So in that way, you can be very specific about who gets what. All right, so that is all of the tools that you have available to you. If you do have questions or concerns about this, not only do we have the articles that are available to you, but of course support at Uplifter Inc. is always here for you as well. Now that we've got all the tools on our tool belt, let's take a look at an instance where we actually have to sort of resolve some of these circumstances. In this particular instance, we are going to close Kyle here, and we're going to navigate to people and accounts and member accounts, and we are going to find these lost lovers of Padme and Anakin Skywalker. Here we are. So this is a family, a very mixed family, a lot of different kids in different scenarios here. If we go to Anakin's account and we go to his participants, we see that there's Leia and Luke. And if we go to Padme, we can see her participants. She's got Riot, Leia, and Luke as well. Now, one thing as an administrator that you may find is very often the case is that parents tend to make their own participant profiles because they sometimes don't know any better, they don't know how to share their accounts, etc. Maybe they just didn't even take the time to look into it. That can happen, unfortunately. In this particular instance, what we want to do is we want to share these participants with Padme, but we don't want to let Padme's participant, or her specific participant Riot here, be shared with Anakin. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to use the invitation tool in order to send invitations for these participants to Padme so that she can see these participants and use them. Now you might be asking yourself, well, she's already got these participants, but if we take a peek at these participants, we can see at the end of the URL, when we enter into these participant profiles here, at the end of the URL, they have participant IDs. So Leia is participant 52, and Luke is participant 89. But if we go to Padme's instances, Leia is 52, that's all good, they're using the same instance of Leia, but Luke is 91. So in this particular instance, Leia's already done, she's already connected properly, but there's two versions of Luke. And if we went to people and accounts participants, we'd actually see two Luke Skywalkers. All the way down here, and you know what? Let's use the tools we have at our disposal, and let's look for any Luke here, and there's our two Luke Skywalkers. So we want to get rid of one of those Luke Skywalkers, we only want one. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to figure out which Luke Skywalker we want to keep. Now this is, again, dependent on the information on these profiles. It might be based off of the birth date, it might be based off of invoices that are joined, stuff like that. In this particular instance, under Anakin, this option is deletable, so this Luke is not connected to anything. And if we go to Padme's, yeah, Luke is also deletable. So we have pretty free options here. We can remove whomever we like. So in this particular instance, I'm going to remove the one from Padme, and then we're going to share the one from Anakin. So I can do this very easily by selecting this delete icon and removing that. And now that that's done, I'm going to navigate back to Anakin's account here, and I'm going to navigate to the account menu, to the family tab, and now I can perform that invitation that we talked about. So I'm going to select Luke Skywalker instead of inviting a member. So I'm inviting the participant, but I'm going to trick the system. I'm going to send it to an admin instead. So I'm going to select mail. I want to create separate accounts because I don't want to share any information. It's going to be for Luke Skywalker, but I'm going to send this to Padme. Now when I receive this email, it's going to look a little something like this, where I have received an email and it says you've been invited to create an account, and I can click this accept invitation. In this particular instance, I'm just going to copy this link location, and we're going to go to that in another browser. Now it's going to ask me whether or not I want to create an account. So as an admin, or if you were, sorry, my apologies, as a member, if I were being sent an invitation for brand new, I can fill this information out and actually generate a member account. Similarly, if you're sending this to a participant for them to generate their own member account, they can fill in this create new account information here and successfully do that and share that participant profile with you. However, we are going to select I already have an account, and I'm going to put in Padme here, and I'm going to grab Padme's password, and I'm going to log in. Oops, Padme email with no white space. There we are. So that has actually successfully accepted that for me, and now it's letting me know that now that that's accepted, I can log into the system, and I'm going to do that as Padme. And now that I'm logged in, I can navigate to my participants, and now I see Riot, Leia, and Luke. And this Luke, as we can see down in the bottom left-hand corner here, when I hover over this URL, it's participant number 89. Might be a little small, so let's actually click right on it. And we can see in the URL here, participant 89. And that's the Luke that we wanted in the first place. So there we are, folks. That was the complicated scenario there. Now you have all these tools at your disposal, and so now you can really clean up the sites. Maybe you do spring cleaning, winter cleaning, whatever you guys do. You can make sure that your member listings and your participant listings are nice and clean and concise. You can also help your members do this on your behalf. They can self-serve all of these options, except for, of course, deleting themselves. So they can self-serve all of these options. And we highly recommend that you offer maybe like a help page or a how-to page where it just talks a little bit about how users can do these things on their own accord. Excellent. That is everything that we have for you today, folks. I wanted to say a big thank you to everyone for joining us today and for your patience with the audio issues with the recording there. We always encourage you to navigate to our Learning Center, learn.uplifterinc.com. This has all of our articles here. It also includes our webinars here too, so if you do want to sign up for a webinar, or if you want to watch past recordings of webinars that maybe you missed, you can absolutely do so either through our YouTube channel, or you can just scroll down to the bottom here of this article and you can see the recordings embedded right in the article, so you can watch those at your leisure and keep up with everything, all the amazing tools and features that you have within the Uplifter system. And of course, last but not least, you always can reach out to us absolutely anytime at support@uplifterinc.com. Once again, thank you all for joining us today, and we hope you join us with our next Wednesday webinar. Take care.